Welcome to Panda Tale. I hope you have a great time listening to the story. If you enjoy it, don't forget to give me a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. The first thing I did after being reborn was to feed my husband Marcus Sterling a bowl of medicine that would end his bloodline forever. If he wanted to pretend he couldn't have children, then I would help him fulfill that wish. In my previous life, my husband fabricated his infertility, then righteously urged me to seek another man's seed to bear children. But I was a noble lady from a distinguished family, how could I accept such a thing? So he pleaded with red eyes, even threatening suicide multiple times over this matter. My heart softened momentarily, and finally I nodded in agreement. Never did I imagine that when I endured the humiliation of letting a crude man into my bed, it would be my own husband who burst in with others to catch us in the act. From then on, my reputation was ruined. I left with divorce papers and eternal shame, returning to my maiden home. Only when he officially married his cousin Lily Monroe, who had been living in his manor, and she gave birth 7 months later, did I finally awaken to the truth. In desperation, I set fire and burned them both to death, perishing together with him. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day he first suggested I bear another man's child. This story is posted on the YouTube channel, Relaxing Story Reviews. Enjoy listening. At this moment Marcus was kneeling, kowtowing repeatedly until his forehead bled. He begged, "Cannot let people say I have no offspring. My wife, I beg you, for my sake, leave an heir for the Sterling family." I thought coldly to myself, such excellent acting, flawless performance. Compared to him, I was far inferior. I had to pinch my thigh hard to squeeze out a few tears. The words, "my husband," nearly made me vomit as they left my lips. I had to pinch my thigh again before saying with a choked voice, "Don't be like this, I agree with you." He froze, clearly not expecting me to accept such an absurd request so easily. His face, feigning pain, briefly showed surprise. I struggled to appear sorrowful, speaking gently. "Husband, the prescription left by that divine physician, could you try drinking it for a few more months? If it truly doesn't work, then I'll listen to everything you say." After speaking, I covered my face with a handkerchief, pretending to sob. The suspicion in Marcus's eyes gradually faded. He quickly embraced me, smiling and reassuring me repeatedly, "My wife, thank you. Rest assured, I will diligently take the medicine." I looked at him, speaking softly. "Husband, you've suffered." When he made excuses to go read, I immediately called for Autumn, my trusted maid. When she came close, I whispered a few instructions in her ear. Autumn was shocked, looking at me hesitantly. "My lady." I smiled to reassure her, "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." Finally Autumn nodded reluctantly. As she left, she kept looking back. Seeing her figure, my eyes suddenly stung. In my previous life, when Marcus brought people to catch me in adultery, Autumn was the only one who risked death to shield me, speaking up in my defense and testifying for me. But she was just a maid, who would believe her words? In the end, Autumn was beaten to death cruelly before my eyes. Now heaven has eyes, giving me another chance at life. So Marcus and that cheap woman he loves, I absolutely will not let them go. Remembering my previous life, I smiled coldly. Didn't he claim he couldn't have children? Then I'll help him truly end his bloodline. When I entered the room carrying the prepared medicine, Marcus was lying in bed, staring blankly at the bed curtains. Anyone who saw him would think he was deeply devastated, truly excellent acting. I sat beside him, using a spoon to feed the medicine to his lips, speaking gently, "Husband, the medicine is ready. Drink it while it's hot." Watching him swallow the entire bowl gulp by gulp, I finally felt at ease. This medicine was from my mother's family, specifically used to cut off reproductive ability. To be certain, I deliberately doubled the dose. After he finished drinking, he still wouldn't let it go, scrutinizing me as he said, "Wife, if I drink this and it still doesn't work, you must keep your promise." I immediately put on a pained but determined expression. "Husband, rest assured, what I promised you, I won't forget. If it truly can't be cured, I'll listen to everything you say." Then I shed tears and began crying aloud. He embraced me again, comforting me gently. In the following days, Wutong Courtyard where we lived always carried the scent of medicine. Even my mother-in-law heard the news and immediately sent someone to summon me, asking about his health. Why hadn't he recovered after days of medicine? I said with a choked voice that my husband only had a mild cold and had improved greatly recently, telling mother not to worry. But she immediately darkened her face and pressed further. If it's really just a cold, why are you crying and looking so sorrowful all day? Tell the truth. What's really going on? I lowered my head hesitantly and said, Mother, I dare not hide anything from you. Husband truly has nothing serious. No matter how she pressed, I could only say my husband had a cold and was physically fine. Yet every glance, every gesture of mine was deliberately hinting to my mother-in-law that her son was not just ill, but seriously so. She indeed grew suspicious. Soon after, she personally brought an imperial physician from the palace straight to Wutong Courtyard. After Imperial Physician Harrison finished taking his pulse, his expression changed dramatically. Seeing this, my mother-in-law immediately asked, Dr. Harrison, what's wrong? How is Marcus's health? Looking at Dr. Harrison's troubled expression, I immediately dismissed all the servants in the room, keeping only 3 people, myself, Marcus, and my mother-in-law. Dr. Harrison glanced at me gratefully. After all, the fewer people who knew about such matters, the better. He then sighed, looking at my husband with eyes full of sympathy. Young master's health is not concerning itself. My mother-in-law anxiously interrupted, Please speak directly. What exactly is wrong? Dr. Harrison knew he couldn't hide it anymore and sighed. Young master cannot have children. At these words, my mother-in-law froze as if struck by lightning, standing speechless. But the one even more stunned was Marcus himself. His eyes bulged as he roared like a madman. What did you say? I had to pinch my thigh hard, pretending to lower my head and wipe tears, to suppress the laughter threatening to burst out. Marcus flew into a rage, smashing everything in the room, even causing Dr. Harrison to cut his hand on broken porcelain. After escorting Dr. Harrison out, I took the initiative to slip him 100 taels of silver, saying with a choked voice, Dr. Harrison, my husband was just momentarily emotional. Please forgive him. I then deliberately showed difficulty, stammering, about my husband's condition. Dr. Harrison immediately understood, nodding, Young madam, rest assured. No matter who asks, I will say the young master only has a mild cold. I smiled gratefully and saw him off. Behind me in the room, Marcus was still roaring in anger. Quack. He must be a quack. Mother, I don't believe it, he must be wrong. I'm not sick. Indeed, he never expected that his deliberate act of withholding his seed during intimacy to frame and destroy my reputation would now result in an imperial physician declaring him truly infertile. How could he swallow this truth? I rubbed my eyes to make them redder before slowly entering. Seeing Marcus's twisted, angry face, I feared he might vent his anger on me, so I quickly spoke to comfort my mother-in-law first. Mother, please don't worry. The divine physician left a prescription. Husband will surely recover. My mother-in-law finally came to her senses and immediately questioned. Which divine physician? What exactly happened? Explain clearly. I cried while speaking with a choked voice. After 3 years of marriage without children, husband went through great trouble to invite a divine physician from Jiangnan. Unexpectedly, the results showed husband had some issues. But mother, please rest assured, husband has been taking medicine these past few days. Perhaps with just a bit more time. My mother-in-law immediately grasped at this hope, turning to look at Marcus. We cannot give up. Mother will invite more renowned physicians. There must be a way to cure Keely. She left energetically, muttering names of famous doctors as she walked. After that, whether imperial physicians from the palace, renowned folk doctors, or even wandering healers, all were brought to Sterling Manor one after another. To the outside world, Sterling Manor claimed my mother-in-law was ill and needed medical treatment. But as time passed, rumors spread throughout the capital that Marcus had a strange illness and couldn't have children. Even servants in the manor whispered behind closed doors. Once when 2 servants were talking, Marcus caught them. guilty and startled. He didn't dare make a scene but couldn't swallow his anger either. His face turned red as a cooked crab, his neck twitching with each pulse. I coldly shouted, "Gossiping about your masters behind their backs. Each of you is fined 1 month's wages and will receive 20 lashes." The two servants knew they had committed a grave taboo and could only bow their heads and accept punishment. Marcus's expression finally softened somewhat, his gaze toward me even carrying some gratitude. I smiled at him, but my heart was full of mockery. Compared to the vicious gossip I had to endure in my previous life, these few comments were much more pleasant. Marcus turned red just from hearing a few sentences. I wonder if he'll cough up blood when the truth is revealed. Thinking of this, my heart filled with sweet anticipation. I turned to look at him, speaking gently. "Husband, should we go see Mother?" On the 1st and 15th of each month, Marcus and I had to dine at Mother-in-law's courtyard. And naturally, Lily Monroe, who had always lived in the manor, was present too. Lily Monroe was the cousin Marcus loved. Seeing us enter together, Lily Monroe immediately performed a respectful bow. "Greetings, cousin." Marcus nodded coldly, maintaining proper etiquette but with distance. Watching them maintain such propriety, who could guess these two, one pretending to be virtuous, the other sanctimonious, had already conspired behind my back, even secretly conceiving a child together. I smiled coldly, glancing at them. Before Lily Monroe, on the dining table were several dishes I had specifically instructed the kitchen to prepare. Fatty stewed pork knuckles, steamed salted fish, stir-fried river shrimp, all dishes with strong, greasy odors that easily cause nausea in pregnant women. Behind her on the flower stand were even several pots of blooming narcissus, their pungent fragrance enough to make anyone with morning sickness nauseous. Sure enough, Lily Monroe repeatedly raised her handkerchief to cover her mouth, pretending to wipe, but her eyes revealed discomfort. Seeing this, I curled my lips. My calculations were correct. The child in her belly could no longer be hidden. Fortunately, her reactions were clear enough, otherwise I would have had to think of other methods. As expected, shortly after, Lily Monroe suddenly clutched her chest and dry heaved right at the dinner table. Marcus reflexively turned to look, his eyes full of worry and anxiety, but quickly hid it away. I immediately looked to Autumn and ordered, "Miss Lily is unwell, quickly fetch a physician." Autumn left immediately. My mother-in-law also anxiously asked, "Lily, what's wrong? Where do you feel uncomfortable?" Lily Monroe forced a smile. "Aunt, I just felt momentarily nauseous. It's nothing serious." Soon, Autumn returned with the physician. Perhaps Lily Monroe had begun to realize something. Her face was pale, wanting to refuse but held firmly by my mother-in-law's hand. She worriedly said, "Let the physician examine you. How can I be at ease seeing you like this?" After taking her pulse, the physician frowned and quietly said, "Miss is with child." Before my mother-in-law could process what "with child" meant, Marcus understood immediately. His eyes bulged in anger as he glared at Lily Monroe, shouting, "You dare get pregnant? Whose child is in your belly?" Everyone in the room was immediately driven out. Marcus went mad, cursing loudly, every word the same vicious insults he had used on me in my previous life. "Shameless wanton, loose woman who knows no propriety," Lily Monroe cried while explaining, even detailing how intimate they had been, when it happened, missing no details. But Marcus still didn't believe the child was his. Well, of course, whether imperial physicians or street doctors, all had confirmed Marcus couldn't have children. I watched enough of the show, thoroughly enjoying his mad performance, before putting on a pained expression and speaking with a choked voice. "Husband, if cousin is already pregnant, perhaps you should take her as a concubine." Marcus's face darkened as he ground out each word. "You want me to take such a shameless woman as a concubine?" "Never." I looked at him and continued gently, "But the child in cousin's belly might indeed be yours, right?" At my words, both Marcus and my mother-in-law turned to stare at me, their expressions a mix of shock and anger. Even Lily Monroe's gaze toward me held a flash of gratitude. I continued calmly, "All the physicians only said husband has difficulty conceiving, not that it's absolutely impossible. I've heard some women have special constitutions that make conception easier. Perhaps cousin is such a person. My mother-in-law began to waver. Elena Carter's words make sense. Besides, Lily is already pregnant, the rumors outside will naturally disappear. Seeing Marcus also softening, I added more fuel. After the child is born, we can use blood to test parentage. If it truly is husband's child, wouldn't that be the best outcome? I didn't need to finish, everyone understood. Marcus still had feelings for Lily Monroe. Naturally, his heart hoped the child was his. And so 3 days later, Lily Monroe, who had been a cousin living in the Sterling Manor, quietly became Marcus's concubine. In my previous life I was framed for adultery, stripped of my entire dowry, all falling into Marcus's hands so he could use it as betrothal gifts to marry Lily Monroe with a grand 10-mile red dowry procession. But in this life, there was no grand wedding, no flower sedan, no procession, just 2 celebratory candles quietly added to her room. That was all. The next day, Lily Monroe knelt to serve me tea. Her neck and wrists were covered in purple bruises, clearly not marks from normal intimacy. I knew with Marcus's hidden illness by her side, her future life would be no different from hell. I smiled as I accepted the teacup, taking a satisfying sip. With Lily Monroe here, I no longer needed to pretend intimacy with Marcus. From then on, whenever he came to Wutong Courtyard, I had Autumn prepare him a bowl of medicine, sometimes with tiger penis, sometimes with dog testicles, sheep kidneys, ox pizzle, pig bladder. The medicine was carefully prepared, the fishy odor so overwhelming anyone who smelled it would feel nauseous. The first time he drank it, Marcus vomited violently after just 1 sip. I pretended to panic, my eyes reddening. Husband, I only heard people say pig bladder can cure men's illnesses. Are you all right? When he heard pig bladder, he vomited even more violently. I patted his back comfortingly, while laughing inwardly with indescribable pleasure. After that, whenever I brought medicine, he would make excuses to flee straight to Lily Monroe's courtyard. Clearly he was certain the child in Lily Monroe's belly wasn't his, yet since she was still pregnant, he still allowed her to stay overnight in his room. I smiled coldly to myself. In my previous life, Marcus had treated her as his true love, cherishing her in his palm, scheming everything for her, even harming me. I still clearly remembered. When the Sterling family's child was 3 months old, I secretly bribed the guards at the back gate, intending to confront Marcus for clarity. Unexpectedly, I overheard a heart-wrenching conversation. Cousin, Elena was once your wife after all. When you pushed the adultery onto her, weren't you afraid it would affect your reputation? It's fine. In the eyes of the world, I'm just a pitiful victim. Besides, if I didn't completely destroy her, how would Mother agree to let you marry into the family? Lily Monroe smiled shyly. I don't care about status, as long as I can be with you. Cousin, that's enough. He embraced her tenderly. But I care. You must also think of our child. Could you bear to let our child be an illegitimate bastard without status? Hearing this, what else did I not understand? There was no need to question further. At that moment, I only wanted Marcus to pay the price. That night, I snuck into the small kitchen in Wutong Courtyard. When everyone was deep asleep, I set fire to burn down the room where they slept. Watching them struggle in the sea of flames, I threw myself in, gripping them tightly to prevent escape, dragging them both down to hell with me. Only when I saw their final terrified and resentful gazes did I smile with satisfaction and close my eyes in death. Fortunately, heaven has eyes, giving me another chance at life. Now, hearing the wailing cries from Lily Monroe's courtyard, I felt incomparably pleased and fell into a peaceful sleep. The next day, while I was having breakfast, Lily Monroe suddenly burst in, falling to her knees before me. Her face was haggard, hair disheveled, clothes wrinkled. She cried and begged, "Sister-in-law, please, please save me." Her hands and neck were covered in bruises, not marks of passion but signs of brutal beating. I snorted inwardly. Marcus truly showed no mercy. Then I clicked my tongue twice and asked coldly, "What do you mean by this?" Lily Monroe trembled as she answered, "Sister-in-law, I can't take it anymore. Cousin, he will beat me to death. I truly don't want to die." I gently helped her up, speaking softly. Food can be eaten carelessly, but words cannot be spoken carelessly. Moreover, isn't it a concubine's duty to serve her husband in bed? Am I right, Miss Lily? Lily Monroe's eyes widened at me, clearly unable to believe it. I, who had desperately protected her when Marcus doubted her, now spoke such cruel words. I wiped her tears, sighing softly. I know your days aren't easy, but it's not without solutions. I leaned close to her ear and whispered, men, you know, as long as you serve them well in bed, they'll be gentler. Seeing the shock in her eyes, I smiled casually. If you don't know how, why not find someone skilled to learn from? Lily Monroe showed a flash of panic, her eyes full of struggle. Before she could react, I whispered again, I heard Lady Flora was originally a courtesan given by colleagues. When old Master Sterling was alive, she was incredibly favored, even Mother, despite having Marcus as her only son, had to give way. Of course Lily Monroe, having grown up in the manor, knew this history well. Her eyes darkened, and finally she lowered her head. Sister-in-law, I was improper today. Thank you for protecting me that day. I only smiled without speaking, seeing her out. Watching her small retreating figure, I thought coldly, can't take it after just beginning. Yet you dared scheme against me. This bit of suffering doesn't even equal 1/10,000th of what I endured in my previous life. I must repay you all 100,000 times over. Don't rush, the good show is about to begin. Sure enough, not long after Lily Monroe regained favor, Marcus came less and less to Wutong Courtyard, staying at her courtyard almost every night, despite her belly clearly showing. But the more intimate they became, the more coldly I waited the entertainment. Until one night, Autumn urgently woke me. My lady, Miss Lily's courtyard, she's going into labor. I immediately sat up, mentally counting the days. The pregnancy was only 7 months along. When Autumn and I rushed to Fangfei Courtyard, it was already in chaos. Lily Monroe writhed on the bed, blood flowing profusely below, moaning in pain with a deathly pale face. The midwife hadn't arrived yet, only the manor physician was taking Marcus's pulse. His face was twisted, both angry and panic. I carefully observed his expression. His eyes showed a chaotic mix of anger and terror, truly having lost all control. Seeing the blood on his clothes, I suddenly understood everything. Perhaps while they were being intimate, it triggered premature labor. I laughed inwardly with incomparable glee, wondering if this time Marcus would be scared impotent. That night, Lily Monroe's moans grew increasingly pitiful, her painful cries echoing throughout the courtyard. Fortunately, the midwife finally arrived, rushing breathlessly into the room. Upon entering, she loudly ordered everyone out. So Marcus and I had to wait outside, one drinking ginseng tea, one drinking calming medicine. We both remained silent, each harboring different thoughts, quietly awaiting dawn. When the first light appeared in the east, the midwife's shout came from inside. It's out, the baby's out. The baby was born like in my previous life, a boy. But being premature, the baby's cries were weak as a kitten's, his tiny body underdeveloped. Wrinkled skin nauseating to see. With just one glance, Marcus clenched his fists, hissing through gritted teeth, not mine. His roar echoed throughout the courtyard, frightening everyone into holding their breath. Even the physician and midwife trembled in fear, no one daring to breathe heavily. As for Lily Monroe, who should have been cherished, she had long since fainted. No one paid her any attention. Only my mother-in-law hurried over, lifting the baby to examine carefully, trying desperately to find any resemblance to Marcus, but disappointment only grew clearer on her face. Marcus went berserk, personally taking a bowl of water, cutting the baby's finger with a knife to drip blood in, then cutting his own finger to drip blood in the same bowl. The entire room stared fixedly at that bowl of water. Only I already knew the outcome. I had once heard an old physician say, if clear cooking oil is added to water, even father and son's blood cannot merge. And in Sterling Manor, it was too easy for me to tamper with a bowl of water. So regardless of who fetched water today, there would be a drop of clear oil inside, and the result was predetermined. Sure enough, After an incense stick's time, the 2 drops of blood still hadn't merged. This sight crushed all of my mother-in-law's faith. Her face instantly aged several years. Marcus still refused to believe, changing to fresh water and repeating the process. The second time they didn't merge. The third time, still 2 drops of floating separately. Finally he had to accept the truth. By then Lily Monroe had awakened. Hearing the results, she immediately covered her face and wailed pitifully, "Cousin, I didn't lie to you, it truly is your child." That sentence drove Marcus mad. Not caring that she had just given birth, he angrily dragged her from the bed, throwing her before the 3 bowls of water. "The evidence is clear, still dare to deny it." He pounced like a wild beast, beating and kicking while spewing vicious words. "Cheap, shameless woman. Promiscuous creature who knows no shame, daring to cuckold me." My mother-in-law stood there showing some reluctance, but hearing him shout curse after curse, insult after insult, she only gritted her teeth and turned to leave without intervening. Only when Lily Monroe fainted again, her breathing as thin as thread, did Marcus stop. He vented his rage on the 3 bowls of blood testing, sweeping them all to the floor. Porcelain shattered throughout the room before he left grimly without looking back. I stood silently watching Lily Monroe lying unconscious, body covered in blood and bruises, my gaze cold and unmoved. But turning to that weakly crying baby, I involuntarily felt my heart grow heavy. In my previous life, this child had been plump and fair, held in Lily Monroe's arms, smiling brightly like a little angel. But now he was just a fragile life, crying with no one to comfort him. I sighed softly, ultimately unable to harden my heart, turning to tell Autumn, "Take good care of the baby." After that incident, Marcus began frantically seeking treatment everywhere, offering huge rewards, searching for renowned physicians from all directions. Soon enough, a famous divine physician from the north came to the manor. It was said he originally came to the capital to visit relatives. Knowing Sterling Manor offered generous rewards, he conveniently stopped by to earn some travel money. Unlike the fake divine physician Marcus had hired before to deceive me, this was a genuine divine physician with superior medical skills and widespread fame. After taking his pulse, the divine physician pondered for a long time before speaking. "Young Master Sterling, your pulse shows signs of poisoning, an extremely domineering drug specifically used to end men's bloodlines. If I'm not mistaken, it should be a type meant to be ingested." Hearing this, I immediately felt a chill, my scalp tingling, cold spreading from head to toe as I rapidly reviewed my entire previous plan in my mind. Though Autumn had handled everything for me, and all contacts were trustworthy, with traces cleaned up, someone still recognized it. I forced myself to stay calm, looking toward Marcus. His face was twisted with rage, eyes bulging as if wanting to devour the person before him alive. He roared at the divine physician, "Are you certain?" The divine physician understood his state of mind, showing no anger but calmly taking his pulse again, more carefully this time, then nodding. "The pulse patterns show no mistake, it's that type of drug. I must also ask if young master has drunk any strange medicines recently." The more he asked about intimate matters between men and women, the darker Marcus's face became. After seeing off the divine physician, I pretended to rub my eyes as if I'd been crying and entered the room. Seeing Marcus frozen like he'd been pressure pointed, I gently advised husband, "Now is not the time for sorrow. What's important is proper treatment and thoroughly investigating who did this." My words ignited the fire in his heart. Marcus immediately gritted his teeth. "You're right. I must investigate thoroughly, see who plotted against me. I'll flay them alive." He turned to look at me, speaking solemnly, "Now I only trust you. This matter concerns bloodlines, it's my life's greatest matter." I pursed my lips and nodded gently, outwardly moved while inwardly laughing coldly. "Even in your dreams, you'd never guess I was the one who acted." After that day, Marcus mobilized all the manor's manpower, searching everywhere. Finally, someone was indeed found who had purchased that sterilization drug, the kitchen steward. The kitchen steward admitted that previously the kitchen kept 2 female cats. Every time they went into heat, they'd lead stray cats in to wreak havoc, yowling at night and keeping everyone in the manor awake. So he went to the pharmacy to buy aphrodisiac, suppressing drugs to mix into the cat's food. This result left Marcus unsatisfied. He continued investigating deeper, turning everything upside down, but the results remained the same. Seeing him so angry, his eyes bulged, teeth grinding, face black as a pot bottom, I pursed my lips, looking pained, and gently said, "Husband, why don't we adopt a child?" He immediately whipped around to stare at me, eyes full of rage as if wanting to burn me alive. I knew the events of the past were replaying in his mind. A few months ago, when rumors of Marcus's infertility spread throughout the capital, my mother had advised me to divorce, but I refused. In my previous life, when he divorced me, it was my mother who personally brought me home, standing strong to protect me, single-handedly blocking all outside gossip. But because I was the eldest daughter with a ruined reputation, it brought criticism to my maiden family, even causing my younger sister's arranged marriage to be cancelled. Though my elder brother felt deep sympathy, he had a wife and young children to care for, so he couldn't help as openly as my mother. Even so, no one ever blamed me with even half a word. Even when I was caught in adultery and publicly shamed everywhere, they still believed in me, believed I was framed by Marcus. In this life I cannot let them be implicated because of me again. On the contrary, I must drag Marcus's reputation through the mud, then appear devoted and unwavering, making all under heaven praise me as a virtuous and faithful wife who upholds her marital duties. So facing his fierce gaze now, I smiled gently and said, "Husband now has Miss Lily and the child in her belly. The rumors about your infertility have naturally disappeared. Now we just need to choose the right time for me to stage a fall into the lake, then spread word that I was injured and can no longer bear children. By then, no one will think you have any problems. If we then adopt a child from the clan, you'll be praised as a faithful husband who doesn't abandon his barren primary wife like me." After I finished speaking, Marcus only looked at me silently without answering, but I knew he was moved. Sterling Manor had a plum garden. At winter's end, when the last snow had just melted and plum blossoms began blooming, I used my mother-in-law's name to organize a plum appreciation banquet, inviting all relatives and nobles in the capital to attend. While everyone ate roasted venison and drank plum wine, amid the beautiful scene of falling snow and blooming plums, I gently smiled at Marcus. Then, while seeing off guests, I unexpectedly fell into the garden pond. Though I had prepared, when the servants pulled me up, my whole body still shook with cold, face deathly pale, completely curled up. Seeing this, Marcus's eyes flickered, the corners even reddening. That very day, Sterling Manor immediately summoned physicians. Wutong Courtyard again began smelling of medicine. Soon after, Sterling Manor spread the news I was originally weak in constitution, and now, having fallen in the pond, could never bear children again. When news spread that Marcus was preparing to adopt, just as I predicted, public opinion began praising him profusely, truly a man of feeling and righteousness, remaining faithful to his barren wife. Such a man was truly rare under heaven. Afterward, Marcus gave me all his private assets. Even things he had secretly prepared for Lily Monroe were all transferred to me. I took this opportunity to request a 1-year-old boy from the Sterling clan, naming him Arthur Sterling. The child was clever and adorable, at the sweetest clingy age that melted anyone's heart. Initially, my mother-in-law and Marcus argued for several days, but she gradually accepted it. However, adoption was no small matter. According to custom, we had to enter the ancestral hall to record the name in the genealogy. On the day of the ceremony, when the ritual was half complete, thick black smoke suddenly rose from outside the ancestral hall. Everyone panicked and screamed, pushing and shoving to find escape routes, but the main door had been locked tight from outside. Amid the chaos, a sharp, crazed female voice came from outside the door, half laughing, half crying. "Cousin, why don't you believe me? Arthur is your child. I conceived Arthur before you were poisoned. Haha, it doesn't matter if you don't believe me. Then all of you die. Once you're all dead, Arthur will be the Sterling family heir." It was Lily Monroe. She actually dared set fire to the ancestral hall, disregarding everyone's lives inside. In the dry weather, the fire spread quickly, engulfing the main door in moments, burning fiercely with black smoke billowing throughout the room. The hall was full of women and children, their pitiful screams unceasing. Several children had cried themselves hoarse. By then people outside had rushed over, restraining Lily Monroe while organizing firefighting efforts. Finally the locked door was broken open, and people inside the ancestral hall poured out, pushing and stumbling to escape. I held Arthur tightly, following behind Marcus, seeing him shielding my mother-in-law, staggering step by step through the chaotic crowd. Right then, the opportunity had come. I quietly extended my foot, placing it right before his toes. Marcus couldn't react in time, missing a step, his body losing balance. At that moment, I gently pushed his back. He couldn't even cry out before plunging straight into the burning flames before us. Amid the chaotic noise, his cries for help were quickly swallowed up. Even his mother, too panicked to notice, only knew to clutch her head and push outside. I still held Arthur, calmly following the crowd, pretending to see nothing. When everyone had gotten outside, the fire in the ancestral hall was partially controlled. Lily Monroe was tied up tightly, screaming madly, tears and snot covering her face, mouth still repeating, "Why don't you believe me? Why should you all die?" When everyone calmed down and sighed with relief at escaping disaster, my mother-in-law suddenly asked frantically, "Where's Marcus? Has anyone seen my son?" I put on a sympathetic, sorrowful expression, looking around sadly, then calling with a choked voice, "Husband, where are you?" Then I pretended to rush toward the ancestral hall but was quickly pulled back by Autumn. "Young madam, you must think of young master." My mother-in-law and I burst into tears together. I pretended to panic, saying, "Husband must still be in the ancestral hall. Please, someone save him." By then others also discovered their family members hadn't come out, making the scene even more chaotic. Fortunately the fire had died down somewhat. Several servants doused themselves with water and rushed into the ancestral hall to save people. Soon they began carrying people out one by one, including Marcus. His whole body was burned, hair completely gone, face charred black, skin cracked and split, some places even showing the red flesh inside. A sight that made people shudder. My mother-in-law screamed pitifully at the sight and fainted on the spot. I stood to the side feeling only slight regret. Why didn't he die like in the previous life? Finally Marcus was carried back to Wutong Courtyard. Only
Mouth with a handkerchief to hide the triumphant smile creeping up. Finally my mother-in-law stood up exhausted and left. Before leaving, she asked me in a low voice, "Elena, could it be that Marcus can't bear the shock and has gone mad?" While I was still thinking of how to deal with Marcus, my mother-in-law had inadvertently given me the perfect excuse. Right after, news spread that Marcus had awakened but gone insane. Many people, especially Sterling clan relatives, came to visit. Marcus tried desperately to explain, insisting he wasn't crazy, but the more he spoke, the more convinced people became he was demented. Finally he tasted the helplessness of being misunderstood. Unable to defend himself, exactly what I had experienced in my previous life. In desperation, he smashed up the entire room, even screaming that he wanted to kill me. I immediately had people tie him up like a roasted pig and bind him to the bed. When people asked, I only smiled bitterly. When he has episodes, he can't control himself. What if he hurts himself? To be more convincing, I personally used silver needles to scratch wounds on his hands and face, making anyone who saw frown with pity. No one doubted my words. When Marcus struggled until exhausted but still couldn't escape the ropes, I then gave him mute medicine. He tried to call for help but could only make meaningless sounds, drool flowing from his mouth, looking no different from a madman. Visitors could only sigh, then turn to comfort me. With your husband like this, you truly suffer, young madam. I wiped my eyes, choking up. After all, he is my husband. No matter what, I won't abandon him. I will care for Arthur in my husband's place, manage Sterling Manor. Perhaps one day he'll recover. Hearing these words, everyone was moved to tears, praising me as a faithful and devoted woman. My reputation once again spread throughout the capital. Even noble families with unmarried daughters looked at me with admiration. Now I held all of Sterling Manor's assets in my hands, was the sole person in power, and had Arthur as the legitimate heir. My life was thus incomparably comfortable. As for Lily Monroe, after the Ancestral Hall arson, she was sentenced by the authorities to exile. However, just a few miles into the journey, news came that she had died en route. As for the child she bore, I considered for a long time and finally chose to hide his identity, giving him to a wealthy and kind farming family to raise. After all, the child was innocent, but Marcus was not. That night I entered his room, looking straight into his eyes, slowly recounting everything that had happened in this life, everything I had done after being reborn, how I had made him wish for death. After hearing the story, he didn't struggle, only looked at me quietly with an expression of, "So that's how it is." Until now, Marcus wished for death. Though alive, he had lost all freedom, lost all honor, lost even speech. He could only lie there enduring every humiliation I bestowed. Though living was bitter, he still persisted for a long time, perhaps still wanting to expose me for revenge. Once he tried using his injured finger to write words asking for help, but his whole arm had long grown weak. The shaky strokes looked like talismans no one could read. Until one day much later, Autumn entered and reported in a low voice, "My lady." He bit off his tongue and killed himself. I paused slightly, then just nodded, turning to continue teaching Arthur, now 5 years old, sitting and reading his primer. Heaven and earth, dark and yellow. The universe, vast and boundless. Years passed peacefully in Sterling Manor. Arthur grew into a fine young man, intelligent and kind-hearted, bringing honor to the Sterling name through his own merits rather than schemes. I raised him with love but also wisdom, teaching him the importance of integrity and justice. The manor prospered under my management. I used the wealth wisely, supporting charitable causes and helping other women who found themselves in difficult marriages. My reputation as a virtuous widow who overcame tragedy became legendary in the capital. Sometimes, on quiet nights when plum blossoms bloomed, I would think of Marcus and Lily. The burning hatred that once consumed me had faded to cold ashes. They had paid for their crimes, and I had reclaimed my life. Arthur never questioned his origins to him. I was simply Mother, the woman who loved and protected him. And perhaps that was the greatest victory of all, transforming a tool of revenge into genuine love. As I watched him practice calligraphy in the garden where I once staged my fall, I realized that my second chance at life had given me more than revenge. It had given me peace, purpose, and a future worth living. The plum blossoms still bloomed every winter, beautiful and resilient, just like the life I had built from the ashes of betrayal. This story teaches us that betrayal and deception will ultimately pay a heavy price. Elena transforms from victim to clever avenger, showing women's strength when cornered. Marcus is a cruel hypocrite willing to sacrifice his wife for ambition, ultimately bringing disaster upon himself. Lily Monroe, weak and blind in love, becomes a victim of her own greed. Though Elena succeeds in revenge, her life remains haunted by hatred, raising the question whether vengeance truly brings happiness. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.